What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I'm showing you a deck profile for pure trickstars. I know that seems crazy, and it is. I feel crazy for doing it, but it's a deck I've not even necessarily wanted to build for a long time now because they have been stumped by the Forbidden and Limited list pretty harshly. But also just to kind of talk about them and talk where they stand, where I think they could be in the future, because I still think this engine is really interesting. Now, I fall with everybody where if you've ever been Droll reincarnated, like, you hate this deck, right? You hate it when you're on that side of it. But I also have always respected the engine just being one card linked to us. It's why Light Stage got banned when the deck was being played with Orcus, because you were able to make a Nightmare, go into Mermaid, and then Mermaid for stuff. Well, Mermaid's banned, so I don't even necessarily understand why Light Stage is still banned. But we'll talk about that stuff at the end. So without further ado, let's get into Trickstars. Keep in mind, guys, this is what I'm hoping. This is what I think is like pretty close to what like the most powerful build for Trickstars can be at the moment. And we'll talk about how things could change in the future at the end of the video. But yeah. All right, so starting off with the monsters, we have 3 copies of Trickstar Candina. She's literally the best card in the deck. Maybe not as good as Light Stage, but we only have 1 copy of it, so I think Candina is probably better overall. She's insane. She's your Stratos. On normal summon, she searches any card. She's technically once per turn, so if you're able to get an additional normal, she'd be even more insane. I'm also playing 3 Lycoris. I've had periods where I wanted to drop this down to 2, but I do want to open it. Because if you open it with Candina, it allows you to dodge certain hand traps, which is very, very important for sure. So 3 Lycoris, and also keep in mind Lycoris's effect returns the monster to hand that it's swapping with after she summons to the field. So you could technically have 3 Lycoris. All 3 Lycoris target Candina in the same chain, and then you only have to swap 1 Candina to put all 3 Lycoris on the field. So very, very insane card, and helps you rack up that burn damage on your opponent. Next up, I played 2 copies of Korribane. I felt like 1's not enough. There was a time where I thought about playing just like 2 Lycoris, 2 Korribane, but I'm at 3 and 2 for right now. Because we just only have 5 legitimate starter cards in the entire deck, you do want to max out on, not max out, but yeah, I wanted to play a slightly higher number of these. And then Lilybell. You got to play Lilybell. She's so good, man. When you start looping Lilybell in like a more condensed game state, it just feels like hard to lose at that point. But yeah, that's it for the monsters. Pretty plain and simple. 9 Trickstars. I feel bad because like we never had Korribane when Trickstar was in its prime, and we got it after the deck had already been like really riddled with holes due to the Forbidden and Limited list, and you gotta feel bad for it then, but I don't know, it's one of those things. Okay, so for the next package, obviously you got to play Dragoon in the deck. Like I said before, this deck's main staple for its engine is that they're all like Candina or Light Stage are 1 card linked 2s with an additional back row removal every turn. So I think one of the best cards you can take advantage of just being able to make a link 2 is Dragoon. I know, I'm sorry, like I don't like building decks with Dragoon. This is actually the first deck I'm building with Dragoon in it, but this is a very specific example of like the deck really needs an additional, like a win condition. The deck doesn't really have that much of a win condition, but Dragoon is just insane because you burn your opponent for a bunch of damage with the Trickstar stuff, and then you make Dragoon, pop a monster to deal them a ton of damage, and then you need like all you need is like 1 monster, like 1 attack from that point, and you can just like win the duel. So yep, gotta play those. Those are your terrible bricks, but whatever. Then for the hand traps, 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Also, sorry about this. I mean, like, listen, I hate this as much as the next guy, but not only is this like one of the few ways the deck can actually compete and like steal wins from decks that are just downright better than this deck, but also Droll's like actually good in the format. It's great versus Virtual World and Drytron. It can be okay versus, well, I guess it's not that good versus Zodiac. I guess if they start with something like Desires, you can keep them from using like a Tenki or something in a turn, but nothing crazy. But all things considered, like I feel like this hand trap lineup's pretty standard for the current format. Ash is Ash, right? Haunted Mansion is actually particularly good in the format, and Diddy Crow is usually good, just because the way Konami designs cards nowadays is like, decks that are good use the field as their field and the graveyard as like their secondary hand as well. So Diddy Crow's just good. They're all good. I mean, yeah, as the format shifts, you could shift hand traps what you want to play in any given situation, but I think you have to play the Drolls, but also just it's actually good versus the format, so you can't really hate it. because even like the deck has the bonus of like if any other deck plays Droll in the main, you could easily run into a matchup that's not Drytron or Virtual World, and you're just like, wow, this is completely dead in my hand right now. Whereas this deck, technically you could still potentially Droll Reincarnation your opponent and just outright win the duel, even if it's not a matchup that's weak to it, which is insane. So that is it for all the monsters. Pretty self-explanatory there, nothing crazy. Moving on to the spells, 1 Light Stage and 1 Terraforming. I don't play Mystic Mine or any of that baloney. I just think these two, if you end up searching the Light Stage off of like Candina and draw Terraforming later, it is what it is. You make Nightmares fairly regularly in the deck. You discard to negate stuff with Dragoon. Like it's just discard fodder, not a big deal. There, 3 Extravagance. I think this is a must in the deck. Like we said, consistency is kind of rough right now. So when it comes to getting to either a Candina or a Light Stage, you just need something. Now this is a draw 2, and we'll talk about another option later down the line. I know this isn't crazy budget, but neither is this list. I mean, we have Dragoons, we have Extravagance, you know what I mean? There's some stuff in here. Hand traps are not always that cheap, but overall, and there's a trap as well, but we'll talk about that at the end as well. But if you're trying to play the most competitive version of Trickstars, it's just not going to be that budget. You got to play some powerful generic cards. So this for now says draw 2. We will take that. I know it conflicts with Dragoon and like Verte and Anaconda and stuff, but you got to play it because the deck just needs an extra oomph card like that. So this is my Red Eyes Fusion. I just don't have a copy at the moment. Yeah, nothing too crazy there. What's nice is that because you don't have a ton of starters in the deck, you can like easily just like not open a Trickstar card, like not a way to get to Candina, and just open this, and you're just like, huh, all right, cool. I'll just go like hard way make the Dragoon and see how it goes. I almost wouldn't even be opposed to playing like multiple of this, just so that it kind of is like a pseudo starter. Like if you don't open it, or you open this and like a Candina, you're just like, well, this is just kind of better. Let me just go for this, and just leave the Candina for follow up. Like you could still make it happen. It's kind of an interesting situation, but I would actually consider playing more of it for sure. And then for the last 2 spells, though, we do play 1 Scapegoat and 1 Called by the Grave. Scapegoat's just really nice because kind of the same way Dragoon is here. The deck just really appreciates another card, like consistency as far as getting like to, I don't know, like amassing like board presence, because like the Trickstars can get you to Dragoon, and like I guess the extenders can get you to Dragoons, the Trickstar extenders, not just Candina and Light Stage. But outside of that, like you got to draw, like you're just drawing traps and hand traps, and if you can never get to those monsters, you're never able to actually amass like board presence and deal damage and get in for anything. So I like Scapegoat because it's an additional way to just open board presence and protect yourself as well. It's just nice. So I like that. And then Called by the Grave. This is just I don't know. We're playing. We have 1 Light Stage and 3 Candina. If we're getting ashed, I really want to resolve through it because like we don't have a lot of cards that need to go through. But when they do, it's huge, and then it's just good in the format anyway. Like you set it, it's essentially just like actually a pretty good trap card. So that'll work anyway. But yep, that's it for the spells. Moving into the traps here. 3 copies of Reincarnation. This is a going first build, so we do play 3 of this. It's phenomenal discard fodder for Dragoon or anything else, because then it's an extender after that. I like this card a lot. A lot of respect for this card. 3 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. I will say this right now. If I had Ice Dragon's Prison, I'd probably play Ice Dragon's Prison in front instead of this. I know this is a little more generically going to be able to hit most things in Yu-Gi-Oh! But Ice Dragon's Prison, like the ceiling is just so much higher. It doesn't target, so technically it's a Dragoon out, which this deck really can struggle with, outing something like Dragoon. So just keep that in mind. Like this will work if you can keep your opponent off of Dragoon, but once your opponent sets with the Dragoon, Ice Dragon's Prison in this spot would be way more helpful to potentially get into and out the Dragoon. And then you have 2 copies of Impermanence. This is just the last hand trap, so 13 hand traps in the main. You really want hand traps, because going second, this deck really cannot play through maybe 1 disruption sometimes. But for two or more disruptions, you need to like not to have to do that. So ideally, you'd want to hand trap your opponent so they wouldn't be able to set up more than one disruption for you that way. And it's just another trap to be able to search off a trap trick. 2 copies of that. Just for versatility here, you can get another reincarnation, making it a little bit more consistent to draw reincarnation your opponent. You could play 3 of this if you wanted, but I wanted to keep the deck 40. I don't think you can risk going over 40 because if you do, you're just going to slowly lower your chances of seeing either a Candina or a light stage in your opening hand, which you always want to see if you can. So nothing crazy here. You could change up this trap lineup as formats change and all that stuff, but I think this is fine for now and stays true to like what the overall strategy of Trickstars really is. So that is it for the main. 40 cards in the main. One thing I would say about the main is I would consider playing Magicalized Fusion. Like I said, yeah, I would almost consider playing like a full like Red Eyes Fusion package, and maybe you could play Magicalized Fusion. That way you could like summon a second Dragoon later on in the duel if need be. Because ending on just Dragoon with no other disruption isn't very good. You'd need Dragoon with multiple disruptions, and even then some decks can out it. So if they can, I would like to have that follow-up possibility of still being able to go into a second Dragoon, but it is what it is. It's just speculation at this point. For now, I like the list where it is, all things considered. So getting into the extra deck here, starting off with the basic stuff, 2 Verte Anaconda, and this is supposed to be 2 Red Eyes Dragoon. 2 and 2. I think if you're playing scapegoat stuff, you don't really have space to play 3 and 3. So it is what it is. If you have to extravagance and you do happen to hit both copies of either of these, it's tough. I'll be honest, but to be honest, you have to play it anyway. You need to do whatever you can to give this deck power boost so that it can compete with like how like better decks work in the current format. So it is what it is. But yeah, just 2 and 2 for me is pretty fine. There. And then you have a bunch of scapegoat stuff. Okay, so for the Link ones, 1 Link Rebo, 1 Link Spider. I like these. Even if the Link Spider gets banned, banished off of the extravagance, Link Rebo by itself allows you to do a lot of the extra deck plays anyway off of scapegoat, so it's not that big of a deal. You just want to be able to put different named monsters on the field so that you can make nightmares and stuff with your links, with your Link materials. So that's it for the Link 1s. For the Link 2s, IP Masquerena, Nightmare Phoenix, Cerberus, Security Dragon, Geonator Transverser, and 1 copy of Trickstar Holly Angel. These are all the Link 2s. A lot of versatility going on here. IP for when you want to be able to set up disruption just via Link materials. And it's really nice because she takes any 2 non-Link monsters. So you could actually just take 2 tokens from Scapegoat and go right into an IP, which is actually pretty cool. So you can make another Link monster under her to maybe get some removal, and then she'd be live to make a Link summon on your opponent's turn. It's pretty cool. Then you have these cards. I would say these 3 are pretty cool. What they allow you to do is they allow you to pretty much do any combination of removal, whether you want to bounce a monster, pop a monster, or bounce a monster, pop a back row, and get the redraws because you'd have him pointing down, them pointing up. So they'd be co-linked, so you'd get the redraws off of the nightmares, which is really cool. So yeah, I just think these are really good. When you're making that mid-range like game, you're able to just like remove a bunch of cards off your opponent's board. Geonator Transverser. This is technically a Dragoon out. It's a cool card. If your opponent puts him in like a weird zone, she can swap control of 2 monsters she points to, and she points diagonally. So technically, you could just like swap your opponent's Dragoon with one of your monsters. If they put it in an awkward zone and you were able to bait the negate somehow or something. Just cool, or any boss monster really. Anything that's like threatening, you just get to swap control. Especially with like, I believe like the Scapegoat tokens, you could even make her with like the Link Karibo and the Link Spider, and then just swap a token for opponent's monster, beat over their monster, and then link off. Like, so you actually got to like, I don't know, beat over something extra there, which is kind of cool. And then Holly Angel, she comes up, she gives you extra damage, she gives you protection to some of your Trickstar monsters. Just a good card overall, honestly. Nothing too crazy there, but the Link 2 is definitely a lot of versatility and utility that you get to take advantage of. Then finishing up here, we have 1 Link 3. The only Link 3 I'm playing is Unicorn. This is for IP Masquerena, or as you're linking up, you just get that removal effect. It's non-destruction, which is really nice. Nothing too much, too crazy to explain there. And then for the link 4s, I play 1 Boral Sword and 1 Avermax. I will also note here that if I had access code, I'm probably playing it over Boral Sword. It allows you to, 1, it takes any 2 effect monsters instead of 3, so you'd be able to go like make the playoff scapegoat with like a security guard, a security dragon, and like a phoenix, and then go straight into him. Get the 4300 buff, you know what I mean, and then you know, I don't know. You wouldn't need an additional extender, whereas you might have to do a slightly more awkward play if when you're making Boral Sword, which is whatever. And then Avermax, he's your more defensive option. I could play Appaloosa here, but honestly, you're usually making this with like scapegoat-ish like materials. So, like, if you're going through Scapegoat, you're ending on like some Link 2s, maybe even going all the way to a Link 3, which means you're not going to be making Appaloosa with more than like at most 3 materials. You're like never going to make Appaloosa with 4 materials in this deck. So I kind of just like him more as a defensive option. They're also, I believe, both outs to Dragoon. I mean, obviously they could just be negated, but if you can bait and negate and still get to these, yeah, you can out Dragoon. It's pretty cool. But yeah, that's it for the extra deck. All pretty much self-explanatory there. It's kind of just Dragoon and then a bunch of Scapegoat links, generic links that are really nice. But yeah, that's where I have Trickstars. I think this is about as good as you can get Trickstars to be in 2020. I know it's kind of sad, such a fall from grace. Like I said, I've always respected the deck for like what the engine allows people to do. I just don't respect the Droll Reincarnation combination. But yeah, there's a couple things I want to talk about here at the end of the video. About the future of Trickstars, okay? There's 3 main things that I think like immediately come to my mind when I think about the future of Trickstars and how they can get better very quickly. So first and foremost, we have Blazing Vortex. And in Blazing Vortex, we have Pot of Disparity coming out. The particular difference with Pot of Disparity is it kind of like, I think, is just a better Pot of Extravagance in the deck. It's not a +1, but it is a 1-for-1, and it's kind of just like a modern day Pot of Duality that you'll still be able to special summon afterwards. So you'd be able to dig through your deck to 1, look for Candina or Light Stage much more consistently. You're pretty much allowed to look 6 cards deep for either of those. And 2, it doesn't randomly banish from your extra deck. So what you could do is actually play 1 Verte, 1 Dragoon, and that would allow you 2 more free slots because you get to pick the 6 cards that get banished, or 3, could be 3 or 6 cards that get banished from your extra deck, and you just get to pick them, right? And then you just pretty much build your deck so that you know which 6 are the first 6 to go, if need be, and you always leave Dragoon and Verte. And that way you don't have to worry about accidentally hitting those, and then they're just dead for the rest of the duel, because you don't want that to happen, obviously. So I think Disparity being much more better at like consistently getting to your Trickstar stuff. Also, don't sleep on the fact that it lets you dig for something like Droll that's unsearchable, and Droll Reincarnating doesn't happen all the time, but that lets you dig 6 cards deep for a Droll. So if you open it with a starter, you have the Droll Reincarnation combo a lot of the time, and that's like insane. So yeah, I think Pot of Disparity will be amazing in this deck as a replacement for Extravagance. Second off, I want to talk about Scapegoat. Okay, Scapegoat has been at one on the ban list for a while. It mainly went there because of Trickstars back in the day, but I think with power creep, Scapegoat's so bad. I mean, look how fast the format is, right? Like, not just the format, but just like how fast Yu-Gi-Oh! Is and has been for the last year and a half, right? Like, Scapegoat's not good. Going first, you have to set Scapegoat, flip it on your opponent's turn, in which they might even have a chance to remove some of those tokens before you get to make use of them, and then on your turn, you get to start trying to like link them away. Right? Or even worse, going second, Scapegoat's so bad. So I've been talking about it for the last couple ban lists about how Scapegoat can come back. Every single one of my ban list predictions, I'm like, Scapegoat needs to come back at 3. That's a huge card for this deck. Like I talked about during the video, was Scapegoat's just a nice additional option where if you don't open Trickstar cards, or even if you do, it's just a really strong card that just gives you a lot of board presence, like off of little investment, which is really, really nice. Definitely a must negate card if your opponent has one. So that's really, really good. And then the last card, I guess, is Light Stage. Light Stage has been at 1 for a while now. I would love, personally, to see Light Stage come back to 3 and then see Reincarnation go to 1. That way, Droll Reincarnation isn't nearly as consistent. I mean, it could still be possible because you could let your opponent search a card or draw a card for off of like a card effect, upstart or even, and then you just like reincarnation draw them and hit them in the kisser. But it wouldn't be as reliable because you can't guarantee. Like, you'd need your opponent to search something themselves first to ever make it live. And then once they see you're playing Trickstar, they just won't search until they've already, like, played most of their cards in their hand. And just play around it, essentially. So it just makes it way, way weaker. But at least the engine would be intact, and the deck would be consistent at, like, getting to its engine and establishing what it wants to do. You could go a little bit more burn heavy. In that regard, or still rely on Dragoon. That's up to the player, I guess. But those are 3 things that I could easily see happening in the next like 6 months. And if it did, I think Trickstars could be a legitimate like control deck for the format. And I think that would be really, really cool. So I want to throw that out there. I'm going to leave it there, though, guys. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Let me know your thoughts on the list. I mean, listen, I'm no seasoned Trickstar player. These are just my thoughts and where I think like the best version of Trickstars could be right now. So let me know your thoughts down below, what you might change, if anything, in the list, and also your future thoughts about Trickstars. What do you want to see happen for the deck? Do you want more support? Do you want to just see some of these cards come off the list so that the deck can do what it used to do, but it's just the format, like Yu-Gi-Oh's way faster, so it'd be fine? Or whatever, anything. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts, but I'm gonna get the hell out of here. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me in the future, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.